Hopefully that's enough on the old, that's going now. You're already long enough as it is. One of those days. It's going to be one of those nights because I think I've got a long night tonight as well. Lots to edit. Could be worse. You seem a bit fuzzier today. Am I? Oh yeah. Hi everyone.
Hello.
Now I'm working. Realised I've got the same mic reference on the both. That's the reason why I need to tweak it a little bit. But on the whole, I think as a initial test, I think it went okay. Ish. Apart from one glaringly obvious issue.
Yeah,
motor.
I mean, yeah, no, it did almost exactly what we expected it to do.
Yeah.
Within reason. Like, there wasn't anything, like, massively like, oh shit, that's a problem.
We didn't break.
No.
So,
that's a win.
And clubs didn't fly out and stuff like that. So, from my point of view, that's a win.
The clamp was like, was what was my, like, only, like, thought of, like, I don't know how this is going to work. Because, like, I got no frame of reference of what that was going to be able to do. But, I mean, I've used the other lever type for doing head changes and grip changes. So I know that once you press that lever, it's like there's quite a bit of force there. So it's just how it's going to react.
Lucky enough, because the grip in itself is tapered. You have a tapered grip. I mean, if it ever wants to fling out through centrifugal force,
it can't go that way.
Yeah. It gets tighter, if anything, which is good. But so no, the robot. We'll have a little chat about the robot in a little bit. As you can see, we've got some topics to go through on the agenda. Yep. I'll just make sure all the chat's going because, as always, unless I pop on there, yeah, there we go. No sound, no sound. Well, there wasn't initially. But there is now, hopefully, fingers crossed. I'm guessing from everyone saying no sound and their message retracted, the sound is back. We do have this thing with YouTube. For some reason, we either have stuttery this or stuttery that to start with on a stream, but it sorts itself out.
I mean, I can unmute the thing and I can hear it, so that's definitely sound.
Yeah. It's cool. That's good. Good. But no, so the robot is in progress. It is up. There's a couple of different changes that I need to make to the frame, just to shore the frame up a little bit, to stop the frame from kind of like doing that, and the motor arm as well. So I've adjusted it now so it's nice and sturdy. It's just a case it needs a little bit. But we'll go to the data that we captured from just doing a 50-mile-an-hour test, and it is, from a proof of concept point of view, quite encouraging. When I get the right motor, the Chinese sent the wrong motor.
I said the motor we ordered would have worked, and I'm pretty sure the motor we ordered would have worked.
Yeah. It's just that the motor that we ordered didn't come. Well, we thought it'd come, and it did. It is sitting here. However, on testing, it is definitely not the motor that we ordered. So another one has to be sent. We're on the it's just a pain in the arse trying to chat via chat when there's the time zone difference and you're getting one message across every 24 hours or so. So, right, let's get that text just a fraction bigger for everybody and also me. Yes, sound is working now. Scared the crap out of my dog when it came on. Sorry.
Wait for my cat to start yelling.
Yes. Where is it on there? Yeah, most probably because I muted it from. I know what I did. Yeah, so I muted it from the AGM podcast stuff. The front screen, of course, that is the same as when I go on my introduction. So everything from that bit you didn't get, but doesn't matter. The most important person's here now, and Andy. That's the most important person down here. There he is, and you can hear him. So. Let's get straight onto the agenda. That's not the wrong button, that's the wrong button. The fade, but it doesn't matter, works as well. The effects of wind. Now, you don't get any wind in here.
And not the digestional kind.
No, definitely not. We're not going to describe all that. Wow. But wind's an interesting topic because depending on what you want to talk about with wind, if it's just general approach shots is one thing. Driver as well. Wind can have a distinct difference with driver when we talk about lift of a golf ball or not. Again, what's your take on when you're playing golf, Andy? What is your take on wind?
Well, I mean, so basically we're talking three kinds of wind, right? There's tailwind, headwind, and then side wind. Now the side winds can be flip-flop one way or the other. They're, the thought process behind both is the same. It's just one you aim left, one you aim right. But I mean, headwind is a direct punishment, right? So every mile an hour headwind is a mile an hour off your ball speed. So if you've got 5 mile an hour headwind, you've got 5 mile an hour less ball speed. And that's basically, at least the whole club in most cases.
So, when it comes to just from pure the 1 mile an hour thing, but is that taken into account obviously how much then lift is then generated? Because
so that's a little harder to predict because lift force is a factor of how much of the ball's spinning and the airflow going across it. So when you've got a direct headwind, you're effectively, from a lift point of view, increasing the relative velocity of the air across the ball. So that means there is going to be an increase in lift, but it's fractional based on the ball speed and the wind speed. So, if you're already 150 mile an hour ball speed, 5 mile an hour headwind is relatively small amount. So it will lift, but and that's harder to factor in depending, every ball speed amount's going to lift a different amount depending on the wind. But so the biggest thing is loss in difference.
Well, the one thing that I, through, how many years, I don't know, of coaching different people about wind, on the course idea, not just sort of kind of like the raw, okay, if you're going to be into a headwind, you need to take more club, and like the fundamental side of things, downwind, you need to take less club and all this lot. Is the left to right wind. So left to right, to me, because I play a relatively straight shot, is just a matter of aiming left or right. If you are any other golfer that plays any shot shape, a left and right is not just as simple as a aim left or aim right. It is also a hurting or a downwind depending on which direction you're going. So if you've got a fade, so right-handed fade, a classic left to right, and you have a left to right wind, when you are talking about at the apex at the top where the wind really starts to take effect of the golf ball, and on the way down again, when the golf ball starts to lose its speed, that shot shape, the left to right, that golf ball is going to start carrying on that wind and go further. As opposed to the right to left, you do the same shot shape and it's going to be hurting. And that's the cat. So,
hey, cat. What are you doing?
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. So, and when we're talking about left to right, that is how I would really encourage people to understand wind when it comes to left and right. Into is quite easy. They do that classic thing where you kind of pick up some grass and you put it at arm's height kind of thing above your head and let it go. And for every, is it 3 pace or 3 yards it comes away from you, or every yard it's, I can't say 3 yards is 4 yards, or I can't remember it is. There's a certain calculation for 12 yards or whatever it be. And again, that depends on how fine your grass is and stuff like that. But I mean, it's effectively, I do it through feel more than anything else. I'm not someone who really does much into the, okay, the blade of grass has moved this distance, so it's this much into the wind. It's through experience more than anything else. But there's plenty of things out there for people to look at on the internet if they want to get an understanding, if they have got no experience because they're new to the game. But you kind of quickly get the idea what's a club wind, what's a half club wind, what's a 2 club wind and stuff. But the left to right, that's the one thing that people never ever take on board. They just think I've got to aim left or aim right. But depending what shot shape you play, you have to add or take away club. So, also, one very interesting thing actually about working at a driving range for so long. The wind with a driver. The interesting thing with wind with driver is commonly range balls, because most range balls are restricted flight, they launch lower and spin more. When it comes to downhill flight, if a downhill wind, you can get an extra big push with a range ball because it reduces the effective amount that the spin, and you can get some seriously long shots with the range ball. That's why, unfortunately, range balls are just bad. But unfortunately, again, not all ranges have the capacity to be able to have 400 yards worth of distance before balls go over the net.
Yeah. So interesting thing about a tailwind, and so tailwind does the opposite of headwind exactly. So it adds ball speed, but it also reduces the relative velocity of the air over the ball. So it actually lifts less. So if you struggle with somebody who struggles with lift, and you have a tailwind, the ball's even less likely to go up.
Yep.
So it actually can rob you of distance. In
Absolutely.
those very rare instances where you don't have enough lift, you can actually get robbed of distance with a tailwind.
Yeah, so if you're talking high swing speed player, generally speaking, if anything, they will struggle with too much spin. It's always that classic thing, I'm hyper fast swing speed, and generally they'll spin it and they're looking at LS drivers to try and reduce their spin, etc. You can get one heck of a push when it comes to a downwind. You take that conversely to a senior golfer that is getting slower as time goes on, and they're always a little bit late to the curve, so they're always playing lofts which they need to be going higher and higher and higher. They're never ahead of the curve, they're always reacting to it. So very quickly, downwind, you can find quite easily that they get even shorter because the golf ball just falls out the sky. So loft is your friend when it comes to getting slower. But I mean, the wind is an interesting topic. It is a very much so on-course topic, but understanding how the golf ball is going to be affected for your speed and for your dynamics, again, everyone spins it differently, is paramount in the wind for you shooting decent. Remember, golf is hard and it gets harder when it's windy.
Yeah, I mean, 10 mile an hour is like pushing, the boundaries of accuracy. I mean, Hero said he was playing in 20 mile an hour wind yesterday, which
Good
is
luck.
just, yeah, just if you're getting even anywhere close to the green, you're doing a good job. So
20-mile-an-hour wind, people don't really understand and appreciate just how bad 20-mile-an-hour wind is. It is
yeah,
quite, that's
it's
proper
like
gusting.
yeah, it's like 4 clubs of distance, like one way or the
Yeah,
other.
it's harsh. Again, wind players, if you're someone who plays in the wind a lot, again, generally find the people's flights get lower. So if you, I see many different people over the years, but you can absolutely tell the golfers which have grown up on, say, seaside links courses or anything like that, where most their ball flights are just so low because they're used to punching everything underneath the wind. And of course, other people that have had no real experience of wind because of where they play, they can afford to have a much higher ball flight. So interesting sometimes. Eero says, hello all, happy Monday. Hello Eero, hope you're well. Should we, as matures, think about just a club more or 2 clubs more, or is it worth it to fight the ball down for an approach type shot, to flight the ball down? Oh dear me. Okay, flighting the ball with the wedges.
I mean,
It's an
like the
interesting topic.
difficult. I mean, if you're if you're a god tiered striker and you can low point control, then yeah, do that. But for the average person, trying to manipulate your strike is going to lead to far more erratic results than trying to deal with the wind that exists.
Yeah, I mean, what Eero's trying to say here, I mean, we're talking effectively, if you were going to a custom handicap to it, you're talking about a better golfer, much more in control of their golf ball, much more in control of their strike, much more in control of their low point. To be able to do these things, this is very much so a more experienced golfer to do this. And I liken it always to golfers' perception, golfers' boundaries, and golfers' idea of what they accept change as they get better. So everybody will appreciate this. When you first started playing golf, me included, your main goal was to make contact with it. Don't care where it goes, the golf ball's got to go forward. How many times have you swung and missed? It happens to everybody, and apart, well, not Andy. The first day at the driving range,
I
Andy got the
rarely miss.
protractor out.
I'll definitely shank it pretty hard, but I won't miss.
Yeah. I mean, I've missed, when I first started playing golf, I've missed quite a few shots. I mean, we're talking when we were juniors and you see the kids spin around like they're ballerinas afterwards because they're trying to hit it so hard. But at the start, you just want to make the golf ball move. Then you get to a point of where you get good enough that you don't ever think about, oh, what if I miss it? You always know you're going to make contact with it. It's just then, where's it going to go? And so then you get lessons for face control and strike and stuff like that. Then once you get to that point, then you say, okay, then what shot shape do I want to hit? And you start then playing around. So there's always this natural progression of how people should improve. And as long as they adjust their boundaries of what's acceptable as they're going along and they don't have expectations well beyond their experience, then you can enjoy golf. Now, obviously, we're talking from what Eero's saying, this is flighting wedges. I mean, it's bad enough trying to get a handicap golfer to understand how far they hit their wedges, let alone flighting one. Upper tier level. What does Tubezilla say?
Is it possible to hit a driver lower or higher by adjusting your swing? I mean, if you tried to D-loft. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
Ball
It's
position.
possible. Yeah. I mean, that's how I generally control slight distance adjustments, is just by slight ball position changes. That way I get a slightly different impact dynamics and that affects I know what the yardage loss is going to be for that. So if I want to take 3 or 4 yards off, that's what I do.
Interesting, because you obviously play a draw, we'll call it. Not a pronounced draw, but you play a draw. And so your reactions to ball position will be different to me. So I basically use ball position just to change trajectory. Doesn't matter where it goes. Mine basically goes sort of very similar distance. It's just changing its trajectory. So the only time when you're talking like crazy amounts, when you're putting the ball so far back as by your right foot, that's a completely different thing. But if you're talking about a ball and a half forward or back, then I just use it to change trajectory. If I want to change distance in between golf clubs, I just fade it or draw it. Little fade.
Yeah, well, I'm basically doing the same thing, but mine's always a draw. It's just how much of a draw. When it's further back, it's less of a draw, and it's going to be slightly shorter. When it's forward, it's going to be more of a draw, and it's going to be slightly longer.
So,
but same basic thing.
Yeah. So TubeZilla, yes, you can. You can do all different things when it comes to ball position. As long as you understand, mainly when people mess around with ball position, this happens exactly the same as when they're doing recovery shots. And anyone who's listening, put your mind's eye, go back to a time when you were underneath a tree and you think, I'm going to punch this golf ball out underneath the branch. How many times has I've hit the branch anyway, but it also pops out for a right-handed golfer out to the right, because they put the golf ball back, but then don't have the associated face closure, and then you come into it de-lofted with face it is open, but it's de-lofted, but it's open with the shaft link.
That's really interesting, because my general setup for a punch shot is I turn my stance way right of target, put the ball right on my front foot, and then have deliberately out to in it across it. So I de-loft it that way.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't like the turn come down on it hard, de-lofting it. I like the.
Yeah, I suppose because you are quite drawy, you would have to then do something specifically quite different to get the result you need. So, yeah. See, things get more complicated when you have a distinct path difference, whether it's that way or that way. And yeah.
I mean, it totally. Your path totally dictates how things happen when you move it around in your stance. When you have a neutral stance, it's very easy to predict what moving it back and forward is going to do. But because it basically just changes the angle of attack and delivered loft. But when you're inside, it not only changes it also changes now your face closure rate and strike position within the face.
And path even more. The more you go back, the more you're inside. Well, you're inside already anyway, and that starts becoming potential hooky. And so, yeah, you can understand why for you, for me it works fine, put the ball back and I can effectively still keep path relatively zero, but effectively hit down a little bit more, take a little bit of loft off and you get that punchy shot. With you are a more of a draw inspired shaper that moving the golf ball further back would increase your path inside even more and have a tendency to potentially really shape it if you're not careful. Interesting. Ira says a lot of people will put a driving iron in for high wind. Do either you make bag setup adjustments for clubs? I will. So depending on the golf course, I've got 2 3-woods, which my normal 3-wood, which is a functional 3-wood into a green, has a little bit more peak height, a lot more descent angle, a lot more chance of stopping. And then I've also got a bomber. So if I know that I'm going to need something off the tee, very, very tight, but I still want to get some distance, I'll choose the 3-wood more, and that will go in the bag rather than the other one. If I know I've got some shots where I'm going to need 3-wood into green potential, because we're talking distance, particular distance to holes, etc. That may not actually mean a very, very long hole. It just means that, say, there's dog legs and stuff that I can't take on with driver, that I'll lay up short as such, but then having to hit then 3-wood into a par 5 or something like that, then it depends. But I won't necessarily put in driving irons because I can just de-loft a hybrid if I really want to get it low. But what are you like, Andy? I know you've probably got 1,000.
Well, I mean, I don't have the long irons, do I, at all? So
no,
it's not really an option for me, But yeah, I know. I mean, if I wanted to hit it low, I would play, the 3 hybrid, and I do it the same way as a punch shot. How I play a punch shot, I'd play a 3 hybrid, maybe grip down on it a little bit, and then play a punch shot. But
I'm really starting to appreciate now the simplicity of path neutral.
Yeah.
my adjustments are like relatively small for little things, and you're going from playing draws to do effective, massive, over-the-top punch shots. And
yeah, I mean, it's not over the top. I mean, it is over the top if you reposition my feet square, it's way out to in. But because I turn my feet almost like 20, 30 degrees,
yeah,
it's square to the path, but the face angles are completely flattened
over
out.
the top of what? There's the point.
Yeah.
So over the top, relative to you, absolutely relative to target, not even close. You're still probably inside. So, right, cool. We've caught
Yeah,
up.
12 degrees outside is neutralizing my swing plane.
Yeah. Right, let's get on to something which is dear to your heart.
Oh no.
And this is you driving this one, because I'm now going to be doing some bits and pieces to try and find
high level production quality.
Yes, I'm ready already.
All right.
Wow. So why do we chase spin, and what does it mean by why do we chase spin?
Oh, is that a question you're asking me?
Yes, absolutely.
So,
do we chase spin?
Yeah, I mean, too many people think that irons need to hit a certain spin number or you can't play good golf. Like this old, and it all comes down to the way golf developed. Like we've only had good data on golf for the past 20, 25 years, right? That's when, the real technology of golf started to take off. Before that, even cameras weren't fast enough to really look at the golf swing and see what's going on. And
oh yeah, I can remember back
people
in the day.
didn't understand what spin meant. How is spin generated, like and what does it do? And it's the causation versus correlation. People saw that the ball spinning more seemed to fly better, and that means okay, so then we need more spin. It's supposed to fly better when they need more spin, but the ball spinning more was a side effect of the impact to begin with, and it was the dynamics of the impact that actually dictated the quality of the strike. So it just became anonymous that more spin was better, but now we look at things, it doesn't really matter as much as we once thought it did.
Well, there's this classic thing that a 7-iron should spin at 7,000 RPM. Now that was fine when 7-irons were
36
37
degrees.
Or whatever it'll be, and the ball was completely different to it is now. When we played not Pro V1s, the ball did behave slightly differently. It did spin more. The modern day ball has stopped it. But then with the modern day ball, you absolutely do get benefits other ways which promote more distance and negate the requirement for the old ball to have so much spin. And so we have got down this route of, well, it was good for 30, 40, 50 years ago, why isn't it good for now? Well, people do have to remember there are golf clubs in your bag that do spin at 7,000. It is just not your 7-iron anymore. And while your 5-iron of years ago was absolutely fine because your 5-iron went somewhat the same distance as what most people's 7-irons do now, your 5-iron was still absolutely fine. It's only because now it's got 7-iron stamped on it and it actually goes further than the 5-iron because the ball
and that
technology.
Just to tie in the other myth of that a modern 7-iron is not an old school 5-iron. It's not. It might deliver the same amount of loft, but it launches higher. It has a shorter shaft, so it's technically more accurate than a 5-iron ever was. But you get in the distance. A modern 7 is not the same as an old 5.
No, not in any way close to being the same. Right, so I know you're a fan of a spreadsheet. I know you're a fan of a PowerPoint. In this case, I think we've got a Word document.
Oh.
Are you happy to go through this?
Yeah.
Cool. Go on, you start that one then. because I've read it. I must admit, I sped read it, but I didn't create it.
All right. As soon as I see it pop up on the live, I'll start talking.
Okie dokie, yeah, because I forgot you've been on Discord. There was a small amount of delay. But
There we go. I see it.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this chart, in this little presentation here, I took a small sample of my own 46-degree iron. In this case, it was a pitching wedge, but it doesn't matter. 46 degrees, convert it to your own wedge. And what I did was plotted 3 different data sets. And I took the launch angle versus the peak height. I took the ball speed versus the peak height, and then the spin rate versus the peak height. Now, that produced 3 little charts, as you see below. I don't know if everybody can see those, but being that small, I have to zoom in a little bit maybe. The first chart is the launch angle versus the peak height. And whenever we look at data, we want to look at trends. And in this case, we have a beautiful little trend of the more launch angle you have. So the launch angle is on the bottom axis. So you can see it goes from 23 degrees up to 30 degrees, which is a little varied, but it doesn't matter. It was just a rough data set. You can see there's a direct correlation between the launch angle going up and the peak height going. And it's a really, really nice data set. It has what's called an R-squared fit of 0.73. Now, in the statistical world that I live in, 0.73 is an exceptional fit for a data set. It's like considered really good. If you had that in a business sense, you'd be really happy. Okay. Then we look at the second set of data. It's the ball speed versus the peak height. And again, we see a very linear trend of as ball speed increases, height also increases. Again, with a fit of 0.65. Again, super, super good. And then we get to the spin. And there is 0 correlation between how much spin I produced and the peak height amount. Everything from just over 5K to just over 7K produced the exact same peak height effectively, irregardless of spin. So out of those 3, and you can see the R-squared fit there is 0.085, which is effectively 0, which effectively means there's no correlation between spin and peak height. So what does that tell us? And then we can tell, well, what else we can tell us is if you look at the equation on the chart, there's a y equals, and then it's a multiple of x, and then what's called the intercept is where it passes the y-axis. The intercept is kind of irrelevant for what we're looking at, but the value before the x value is the x multiplier. And that's how important that value is to the output. So in the case of launch angle, we got a 5.85 multiplier. That's how effective launch angle is at getting to peak height. So it's a 5-to-1 ratio. So for every degree of launch angle gains you 5 feet of peak height. Okay. And then on the ball speed, we have a 3.125 ratio. And then on the spin, we have a 0.0032. It's actually a minus, believe it or not. The more spin tended to produce less peak height. So what does this tell us? This tells us that the old adage of more spin equals higher doesn't work in the real world. It's not even close. It's absolutely not a factor at all. Launch angle, ball speed. And that's why we measure launch factor on irons, because the better the launch factor, the better it is at peak height, and the better the peak height.
So that was with your pitching wedge?
Yeah.
So the interesting thing with obviously spin from golfers have a different relationship with spin depending what golf club you put in their hands. Driver, irons and wedges. And the thing is with spin, it carries through into, with driver, they've got too much spin and they want to try and take stuff off. And with the other, they're focused, they're obsessed with trying to get as much spin as they possibly can do. Now, from a fitting perspective, and even from a coaching perspective, I don't necessarily care how much spin there is. There has to be a functional amount of spin. You can't have something way too low, because unless you've got the ball speed, that is effectively, it won't work for flight. It will fall out of the sky. But
the nice thing about spin is the driving factor is loft and club head speed. Now,
yes,
given a certain amount of club head speed, it's almost impossible not to have a matching spin number. You know, you have to be doing some really weird mechanics to really mess up the relationship between club head speeds.
Yeah, and let's face it, I suppose the faster you go, you've got more wiggle room anyway when it comes to your spin profile. Yes, you're going to potentially cause yourself a little bit of distance issue, because of too much spin, it will potentially, with that much speed, start ballooning, but you do have to have quite a lot of spin to balloon a golf shot.
I mean, I don't know if everybody looked at that when it actually happened. Like, if you get a chance to flick it back, that's my pitching wedge, right? And I'm at 7,000 RPM, right? But look at my descent angles, 55 degrees. So I have no problem with stopping power, even at 7,000 RPM.
No, that's, I mean, I'll zoom in a little bit as well.
And the interesting thing about my swing is my D-loft and AOA are pretty consistent throughout the back. I don't tend to hit the shorter irons more down, so I don't get the big difference between irons that some people do get. But, you know, where's my descent angles, you know. Look at the last few. 55.5, 55.5, 55.5, 55.5, 54.5. So
steep enough.
Yeah, and it's consistent. So spin has no relevance on the consistency of your descent angle.
No, it will be interesting that I didn't see that. You can have a look at the data as well, because I mean, spin from my point of view is even like from a fitting, especially within irons, is for more consistency of flight and consistency of distance. If you do have the same everything within reason, same ball speed and same launch angle, okay, you won't if you're changing spin parameters by quite a lot. But if you are having or seeing a variation of spin, what you'll see is a variation of distance and variation of trajectory and flight. And from a fitting point of view, we don't like that at all. We want to see nice, consistent, within reason. Everyone's a human being, but we want to see consistent spin numbers. I don't care what they are necessarily, as long as we're not sitting at 2,000 RPM with a 7-iron. Even the 4,500s and the 5,000 RPM is okay as long as it's consistent. I've got no issue with that. And as technology gets better and as launch factor on irons gets higher and higher, spin rates or the lack of spin is becoming or will become less of a problem. It's only when you've got a very low spin profile and your launch factor is quite low that you may have an issue. Other than that, it is just a case of launch it with speed.
What speaking of spin consistency, what do you consider a realistic spin consistency? 10%?
What, as in a standard deviation of, or are we talking about a percentage of? Let's do a percentage.
Well, standard deviation. I mean, a standard deviation. You could also consider it as a percentage value. So if I'm looking at a 7,000 spinning iron, if I'm within plus or minus 700 miles an hour, 700 miles an hour, 700 RPM, I would top and bottom. I think 700 RPM would be reasonable as consistent. I think I consider 300 RPM within just the standard deviation of the ball string.
Yeah, I mean, again, it all comes down to the golfer. It all comes down to their ability to be able to hit decent shots and how they interact with the ground. Because again, you hit the ground first and you misstrike something, that's going to cause interesting. And then again, if we're talking about a decent golfer who's hitting the golf ball fairly well, then I'm looking for a much tighter spin window.
Yeah.
We've seen on even drivers that I've tested that I've created standard deviation spin numbers which are ridiculously tiny. But then you put that same situation into a golfer that's 20 at handicap and can't guarantee to hit the golf ball, let alone hit it in the same spot, you are going to see standard deviations off the planet. So and this is where people sort of fixate on the spin. Well, they themselves are moving the goalposts by such a colossal margin that I don't think we necessarily need to focus
Yeah, but
on
I mean,
spin
from
so much.
ballpark for me, if I see 10%, I'm happy.
Yeah, 10%. I mean, if I had, and I would up it or lower it depending on the golfer, depending on what they want to see.
Yeah, obviously. But
Golfers come in and say, if I had £1 for every time a golfer that I'd seen over the years have said, Jay, I just want to be more consistent, I would have retired years ago. I would have not needed to do YouTube. I would have been sunbathing on a beach somewhere because that's what they want to be, the more consistent. But they don't look at what they can do themselves to make them more consistent. They look at, should I change the shaft? Should I do this? And should I do that? Look, wow, there are glaringly obvious things that you can fix beforehand that's going to make you a darn sight more consistent than worrying about any kind of particular small thing. But yeah, we are chasing spin. I don't understand why. And it is this relationship between they want to get rid of as much spin as they possibly can do with the driver, and then anything else. They just want to have as much spin as they possibly can do and have this phantom 7,000 RPM for a 7-iron. Doesn't necessarily make sense.
no, I mean, it's like, why is one so much better for the one than the other? Yeah.
All I care about is consistency. That's it. Don't care about what it is, just got to be consistent. So,
All right.
I know we've potentially answered this already. However, it does keep on rearing its head. And so I feel we may not have either said it enough times to give it enough opportunity for enough people to listen to it, or we haven't explained it well enough. Both of this is our fault. So in that case, is workability real? So first
we're
of
on the
all,
next. Oh, I forgot. I didn't realize we changed topics. I thought you were still
I
on the
know.
spin one.
well, I mean, have you got anything else lastly to add on the
No.
spin?
No.
Really want to get off your chest, or forever hold your peace?
Moving on.
So when it comes to workability, I have my own view on workability, and from working with manufacturers, working with the product engineers, coaching custom fit for years, seeing what other people do with their own equipment, etc. Listening to the myths, listening to the knowledge, listening to many different sources. Andy, what is your opinion on this lovely word called workability?
As simple as I can
It's a big
put
sigh.
it, workability is solely in the hands of the golfer, and irregardless of the club that you put in those hands, they should have within a small margin the same ability to work the ball.
Okay, so let's first of all break it down. What does it actually mean to be able to work a golf ball?
Yeah, I mean, I had the same question in Discord earlier. So by my definition, workability means the ability to change the starting direction of the ball and then change the curvature to move it where you want from that starting direction. So if you're on the left side of the fairway, you got a tree in front of you, the only way to the green is to start it right and curve it back left.
I a little bit more simple for me. So from a horizontal perspective, I just see workability as the potential to apply curvature, tilt axis curvature.
Yeah,
from a horizontal point of view.
Yeah, from the very simplest. Yeah.
Now, I personally, I don't necessarily focus on curvature left to right, because and I've done videos on it in the past, and they're on the channel. No one cares, because it goes against this myth of the fact that it's workability. You don't get a game improvement if you really want to be able to curve a golf club, a golf ball, because it can't do this, it can't do that. Yet a blade will be able to. You get them loft for loft adjusted. Everything is exactly the same, and they do the same thing. There is a small, tiny amount of truth when we're talking about the center of gravity of an iron relative to, from most like game improvement iron to a blade, that may change the exact amount of tilt axis. And again, we could potentially test that with robot to like the finite degree, but it's so marginal, it's basically exactly the same. What people don't understand though, when it comes to workability, with a game improvement iron over that of a blade, let's say, let's go from completely different ends of the spectrum, is the vertical aspect. Not the left and right, not the curvature this way, the curvature that way. It's how much within the ability of the golfer to naturally be able to stick that golf ball vertical over another iron. And that's the constraints of the design. But left to right, loft for loft adjusted, no difference at all. I just broke the internet.
Yeah, no. I mean, the math doesn't support that an iron has anything to do with workability. Every time you break down the maths of how impact changes flight, no, the specifics of the iron do not change it within any reasonable amount. It's
Nope.
path face to path, and that's it. Like, it doesn't matter what iron you have in your hands. If you have that path with that face to path, you're going to get roughly the same result.
So from a product engineer's point of view, so from a manufacturer's product...
I should say, on an iron.
Yeah.
Drivers are a completely different beast.
So from a product engineering point of view, from a manufacturing side of things, manufacturers are very aware that as soon as you have a game improvement iron with blade lengths, we're talking just the length of the blade, the distance between the toe and the hosel. If you have a iron design with a longer blade length, then you have a propensity for that iron to want to turn over less. When you have a blade length which is shorter, i.e. a blade, it is easier for a blade to have a higher closure rate from a physics point of view. However, they forget completely that what's attached to that golf club. It's a messy thing called here. And that messy thing does things which override every single thing that the manufacturers do to the designs of the irons. And so as soon as you put that, because we're talking about the forces at play are so relatively tiny, and the forces that we apply to the golf club, from seeing this thing swing at 60 miles an hour and up to near 70, and it would have gone faster if we only had the right motor. Thank you for the Chinese people that didn't send the right motor. We'll get to that in a sec. There is a lot of aggressive movements that go on with a golf club to swing at 70 miles an hour. We do that and we make it look so easy. How we apply forces to those golf clubs in a way that we do to make the whole thing look as fluid. It's we override everything.
The nerve feedback mechanism is surprisingly accurate. To get a face closed within 1 or 2 degrees in a hundredth of a second. Your body knows what it's feeling. You can't consciously understand it. You can't think through it. Nope. But your body can do it, especially with practice. And so, if you change the club's MOI and change its physical closure, the force required to close your rate, all your body does is just apply more force. And it closes the face on time anyway.
How can I basically go from game improvement iron to blade to player's distance iron to player's cavity to all these different irons, literally flick from one to the other, dump, 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 dump. They're all built massively differently. They've got different swing weights, and within a very small amount of time, I've effectively then start delivering them all 0-0. And it's because it's the human. The human will override. And so the manufacturers will have this product design idea that the fact that, yes, as soon as you stretch out that distance between the toe and the hosel of the golf club, you do make that head more stable or less wanting to release. But you put it in the hands of a golfer and then they start doing their own thing anyway. So workability is an interesting thing. Vertical launch angle wise, getting the golf ball going up high, getting the golf ball going lower. Yes, there is always going to be a certain propensity for one iron to have an advantage over another to do a certain vertical task. applying tilt axis though, you are going to have to go some massive design differences between the furthest extreme one way and the furthest extreme the other way to see even the slightest difference applying the same swing dynamics. There you go. Hopefully we've burst that one now and we've done enough. No?
Same topic next month.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, maybe if we had like 100,000 people watching this, we might have burst it, but
yeah. No, they'll just disbelieve us. I wanted to sort of go on what Charlie said. And yes, Charlie, it would be a good idea if we speak privately about it, or at least on Discord and stuff, because I think it's well worth talking about your son, was it? I think, yeah, your son. He's looking for a new putter and bits and pieces. Pop on Discord, and then we will be able to go through options and bits and pieces on there. Tube says, if you have a high swing speed, 115 miles an hour or more, Andy, I'll let you answer this one. But low spin with your drive, would you benefit by working on your swing to increase your spin until you've enough to use an LS driver head, or would you hit it? So if you have a high swing speed driver, over 150 miles an hour, but low spin with your driver, would you benefit by working on your swing to increase your spin until you have enough to use an LS driver? Or why don't you use a normal drive? If you've got a fast swing speed, but you naturally generate low spin because of your swing dynamics, which is actually quite uncommon.
Rare.
Yeah. Use the most forgiving head that you can possibly muster. Commonly, the more forgiving head, as in the one that keeps the most distance from multiple parts of the face, generally have a potential to spin it a fraction more. And the LS ones will go very, very good, sort of very, like sort of high toey, that kind of section that loves that certain part to get but then fall off.
Yeah.
There are certain, so like the ST.
I mean,
go on. I was going to say the ST230
oh, no, I was going to
Max.
say that.
After you, sir.
No, I was just going to say 115 miles an hour to have low spin. Now, let's define what low spin is. All right, so anything below 2300 is starting to get into low spin territory. Anything below 1900 is extremely low spin.
It's not relative to speed.
Well, yeah, but for a standard head, right? So a standard head, right, like a 10.5 degree non-low spin head, you know, and 115 miles an hour, I'm expecting to see 2900.
Yes.
To 3300 RPM. So if you're down to 2300, that's considered low spin from that swing speed.
Yes.
The only way you could do that is to have an upwards AOA and not have massive positive wrist angle. So you're not adding loft through your wrists and having so you've got you've got the handle way out in front of you, but it's coming up. Now that's a very unique swing, and I mean that's what you'll see long drivers do, right? They come back here and then they almost jump out of their up as they strike it to get that club coming up while keeping their hands forward. And in that case, why would you try and increase your spin? Just optimize your ball speed from that swing. Don't
there
worry
is
about
no
changing
inherent benefit using an LS driver head. I will get my longest distance from an LS driver head because I'm teetering on the 1900s and stuff for my speed. And so, yes, that is the optimum. If I can get my launch in and around sort of 15 and a half and then pop it around about the 1900 or so RPM, I'm going to get my longest distance. But I'm also going to get my most fluctuation with that. And that's the problem about chasing the lowest spin possible. I am most consistent when my spin profile is around about 22 to 2300, even 24 dependent, but I'm straighter and I am within reason, not that far behind on my distance to chase the extra long ones because of the problems that you're going to get with a little bit of turn this way, turn that way. It's lovely to be massively long dog, but for us mere mortals, it's balancing what you need rather than chasing the tiny low spin ones. I did message back to Don, say, Jace, do you think Mizuno will get on the bandwagon with the mini driver? I have heard nothing. I would not be surprised if they do not.
Their R&D department's been pretty good lately. I can't imagine them jumping on a bandwagon that doesn't go anywhere.
No, I think Mizuno at the moment are they're conscious that they're in a unique situation. The fact that they're doing pretty well within the wood market at the moment with their design and what they've made. Hence why they've kept the ST230 Max obviously for a second year in the 2025 to 2026. I would be reluctant to jump on the bandwagon of a mini driver. Honestly, I wouldn't. What we've done, just as long using a core or max model and keep you on current swing. Keep your current swing unless there is some absolutely weird and wonderful, interesting character flaws that you've got when it comes to your swing. Just use the most consistent one.
And remember, forgiveness is not equal to MOI. Right? No. MOI does not equal forgiveness. So the max 10K doesn't mean you're going to hit the ball more consistently. You don't want to be saying, okay, my spinning profile is good, so I'm going to get the highest MOI driver I can. No, you want the driver that matches your strike pattern and its CG location. Like the closer the CG really is to the face.
With that, because the more we do this, there'll be a case of forgiveness from a distance perspective. We want to see that green blob on the heat maps as big as possible on a distance factor. We want to see as big a green blob as we can do so that golf club, that driver is as forgiving from a point of view of its application of distance from different parts of the face. How stable it is from a point of view, and this is where we've looked at advanced data, but we just need more data points going forward to be able to apply this properly to the website, where we're looking at how stable that driver is and how much it tilts the golf ball. That is going to be a very interesting sector when we start getting some information for that.
Yeah, but that affects different people in different ways. Like, I don't necessarily consider that forgiveness, more like matching your requirements to your swing, just like we match loft and heads to your swing based on your angle of attack, your D-loft, and that. Mm-hmm. The same way we apply tilt access. You look at, okay, you apply this much tilt access due to your path and face the path. We want a driver that correlates to that. Now, I don't see that as forgiveness as much as fitting.
Yes. Do we chase spin for the bounce, check, chip shot? Again, that is high tier stuff. Anyone who's trying to do those zips, yeah, okay. Would it be possible to talk in this stream or advise? No, what you can do though, Charlie, if you are a part of Discord, you can get on to, has the members chat, Andy, got voice capability, or is it only gold?
No, members.
Yeah, so if you remember the website, www.askgolfnut.com, whatever tier level you want to be on that, you'll get access to Discord members. And on the Discord members, there is a lounge or voice chat area. And of course, if you just direct message Andy and I, if we're both available at the same time, hopefully we can just jump on there. And Andy's going to be doing his stuff, I'm going to be doing editing or whatever, and we can jump on a chat and quickly go through some thoughts that you've got. No, I don't do fittings now. I don't coach or custom fit anymore. I am so busy with everything. I've had a couple of requests today to say, do you still fit and coach? No, at the moment I am so busy with stuff. I am not coaching or fitting at all. I just haven't got time in my diary. I'm noticing that my Bridgestone or Wilson Triad gets scuffed during the round. Stop hitting cart paths and trees. At what point does a scuff type, mark, impact, flight, and is it more impactful on what? Okay, it actually can make quite a considerable difference depending on how bad it is. And have you done any research and work on how the damage to dimples affects its aerodynamic lift?
So the only way it affects its aerodynamic lift is if those scratches are rotating along the spin axis. So if you've got a scratch here and if it's spinning with the ball, then that is going to obviously have a continual impact on the ball. In terms of scuffs, like anywhere else on the ball relative to rotation, it's going to increase drag more than anything. It won't change tilt axis. It won't change lift as much as it'll affect the drag profile. So it'll add a little bit of drag, and you're going to lose a little bit of distance. But in terms of accuracy, you'd be hard pressed to notice the difference in accuracy from just normal, roughing up. Now you got a big scratch down it, then obviously it could be different. But just normal scuffing should be.
As long as the scuffing is relatively uniform and it's not focused distinctly in one specific area, like if someone's put it on a sanding disc and scuffed it like that, then, because obviously in cricket, you get the bowler will purposely shine up or smooth one side to try and make the ball swing in the air. So when they're bowling, to try and just do a straight bowl, for the ball to physically swing in the air because of how the air affects on the aerodynamic drag you're going to get with a scuffed surface. So generally speaking, when people scuff their golf balls up, it is distinctly not done on a sanding disc purposely in one specific point, and they will rough it up fairly uniformly, unless they, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something specific that you could actually.
Yeah, I can't imagine any, just normal use scuffing ever getting to the point where, okay, that scuff cost me a shot or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, the ball could be that old that it could fly poorly. I mean, I've again at the range when I used to work over there many moons back, we saw some very ropey range balls and ones that draw faders. The ones that draw, and then by the end of the flight they come back and fade because they're that bad. But normal golf balls, no, absolutely not. Alex says, so is there a downside to spin if I spin my traditional lofted 7-iron 7.3 and I'm happy with my gapping? Do I have a problem? No.
I mean, the total spin is just a function of your club head speed and your spin loft, applied spin loft.
Yeah.
So
you're happy.
And that just comes down to your delivery and your AOA. I mean, it depends on what iron you're delivering. So if you have a 34 degree iron, traditional 7 iron at 34, and you're producing 7300, the other guy has a more modern lofted 7 iron and he's producing 5500. Well, what happens when he brings out his 8 iron? He produces 7300 RPM or whatever. Yeah. And then your 7 and his 8 are probably going the same distance. It's just relative to your swing and where you want that club number to go. Like, it doesn't matter what number's on the bottom, as long as that club's going the right distance for you, and the spin generally matches the spin loft.
Absolutely.
The only way you're producing excessive spin is if you're introducing excessive spin loft or excessive club head speed.
Yep.
And then that's it. But inherently, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yep. I can't agree more. I'm not going to say anything else because it's bang on. Alex says, greetings and salutations. All been a bit since I was able to join live. Well, glad to have you along. Thank you very much, Alex, for popping along, and glad to have everybody here today. Iro says, Discord decided that we all... Oh, no, please. Not going on about Kea mirrors anymore. Oh, my word. The RSPCA, though, have we heard from Andy's cat today?
It's a very relevant question from the RSPCA.
Exactly. Yes, we have.
Am I under investigation for
alive and well? After one of the cats was on the rack last week. Much happier this week. Iro says, my ball is way workable. I just don't know which way it's going to work. She says, if a ball is in a bad lie or divot, I think I'd call a smaller head more workable.
I think that's maybe playability, but I don't know. And like that's
Now,
what are the odds of that?
so okay, so let's just run this through very, very quickly. So ball is in a divot. Let's call it a divot on the fairway. Divot on the fairway. The classic, that's bad luck. Someone's hit a shot, haven't replaced their divot or anything else like that, and it's right in there. What does the first thing people do to think what I need to do to tackle this ball from that divot? What are they going to do? What are they going to change straight away?
You know
What
what
do
I'm
you
going
think,
to
Andy?
change?
Go on.
You know what I'm going to change? I'm going to move the ball.
Yeah, well, there's that. Yeah, why make golf more difficult?
Yeah, like seriously, you're in somebody else's divot that shouldn't be there. Move the ball 3 inches to the left. You're only punishing yourself by trying to play it at a divot. That's not a valid lie.
It's not a competition or anything, but let's just imagine they do, right? So the first thing they do is move the ball back in the stance, yeah? And so they have more of a downward angle attack. They have a more downward angle attack, and they have a more shaft leaning delivery. If you either go for a game improvement club, let's call it a ping, because pings have one of the highest bounce per manufacturers out there, like for like, and let's go for a old school Mizuno, which commonly have very little bounce. If you are, even with a ping with 8 degrees or 9 degrees of bounce, if you are superseding that bounce with the same amount or more shaft lean because you're moving the ball back and you'll start to try and get down into the golf ball because if it's in the divot, the bounce of the golf club makes no difference whatsoever. The only difference you could argue would be like for like loft was the fact that the game improvement iron will potentially have a higher launch factor, which will allow to get a little bit more launch angle out of that same delivery.
How deep of a divot are we talking? Like that we have to change the relative vertical.
Hang on. So, yeah, you've obviously clearly never been. I have been in some divots that right. You know your punch shot that you play over the top, down hard at it, yeah. What kind of divot does that create?
Usually none.
That's an interesting delivery then. So you must be, you must be
I'm not
delivering
hitting
somewhat
down
of that.
on it. I'm doing shaft lean. I'm not steep on it. I'm
Right.
delivering.
So if you imagine most golfers, the 99% of slicers, etc., that come across the golf ball and chop down on it, we are talking sometimes divots the same size, like the cubic yard of Suffolk comes out when they hit a shot and they don't put it back. And we're talking divots that can be literally like half a golf club, if not more deep, especially toe deep and massive. And so I've had to play some shots out of some divots that are horrific. So it does happen. It's not nice. And Andy does have the loudest keyboard in the world.
Oops.
It's all right.
I'm just a heavy typer.
Very. Right. Don says my idea of workability is when I hit the ball and it goes forward. Oh dear. Right. Hello, Pete. Hope you're well. On the basis any club can be sliced, they are all workable. It's all down to how much control the holder has of their club head. Bang on, Pete. Smack on. Well done. And Tube says, thanks. Seeing as you're the best buddies with Titleist now, can you ask them what the difference is of the version of 1 and version 2 of the GT2 driver on the club head conforming list? Andy will probably search that one out. Hopefully, I don't know.
Don't think
I haven't
so.
Looked. And I'm not
just because it's on the conforming list doesn't mean they actually manufactured it.
Yes, that's very, very true. It just means it can be on tour. That's all. So every single thing that you'll see on the conforming list has to be on there if it's on tour. Does not mean it's going to be a retail version.
I mean, it's like Rory playing his prototype TMs. They're on the conforming list.
Yes.
Doesn't mean you'll ever see them in the store.
Definitely not.
Not that exact version of it. Anyway.
I reckon, depending on if he was to continue to win a couple more majors, then
they'll
TM
definitely make them,
edit.
but I'm sure they'll be somewhat different to the final production version. It's a prototype, though. Okay.
Alex did say, yeah, there's a few videos that show flight deviation for a ball that has only has dimples on one side. Yes. So isn't it the same? Yeah. So effectively going back to what I was saying about if you could scuff a golf ball only on one side, very similar to a cricketer that polishes one side of the cricket ball, it will deviate flight. In reality, though, the way that golfers use their golf balls and just the run-of-the-mill luck of how they hit things, generally speaking, you don't hit that different tree or a different cart path on the exact same spot of the ball every single time. I mean, that's one heck of luck. But
I mean, it's no different than the stay straight golf balls. You know, they manufactured them
yes,
where the divot pattern has a gap in it. Now, the twisting physics of the spin and the tilt axis and the drag forces that line to always go with the spin and rotation of the ball. So that can actually make a curved shot suddenly stop curving and then go straight again because. But you're
yeah,
talking about like a very precisely engineered concept, whereas a scuff on the ball is very erratic. Every position that it is in the relative rotational vector is going to have a different result. So on the left
yeah.
side, it might cause drag, and that if that side of the ball is dragging, it's going to mean the other side of the ball moves faster, which then puts that defect at the back of the ball, and now long it's having far less effect on drag, but now it's in the spin rotation. So that it's not going to do one thing consistently. It's always going to produce a different result as it flies. So
With a micro messy flight, then, would that potentially cause a slight reduction in distance? And by a yard?
who knows?
Yeah.
I don't like it. Unquantifiable.
Yeah.
Unless you hit 1,000 balls in a vacuum with different amounts of, nobody's ever going to know.
No. Alex, yes, you're right. In principle, not in scale. 100% right. And then finally, before we get onto the robot update, Ryan says, what's your views on a set gap wedge compared to a speciality wedge to match sand and lob? Is it better to keep consistency at the bottom end of the bag? Basically, up to you. There are, obviously, many manufacturers have many sets of irons which have or do come with gap wedge and sometimes sand wedge as well. Sometimes even lob wedge as an option. However, it all comes down to what you need and what you deliver. If you are someone who has either requirements because of your swing dynamics, how you use your wrist angles and how you hit down or not as a golf ball, or you have specific requirements from a golf course perspective, then yes, you may decide to go down the route of a specialist wedge that has a grind which suits the requirements for what you need. The vast majority of people, especially when we're talking about gap wedge, as time's gone on, have been or becoming a little bit more stronger, shall we say, than what they always used to be. And so they work out to be what most people's pitching wedges are, so 10 or so years ago, 10, 20 years ago. So, and are seen much more so as time goes on as a pitching wedge. I mean, Ping did it with the G430, I think it was, didn't it? They strengthened everything up. And of course, then to stop having a pitching wedge finish at something like 42 degrees or whatever it is, they then added in another wedge as a standard part. But obviously, then they changed it around a little bit because it confused people for the 430, and it did affect not sales necessarily, but it affected the fitter's ability to be able to explain it properly. And so people got a little bit kind of. And so they've returned back to the 440, but effectively, no. You can have your gap wedge at literally exactly how you want it to be, whether that be a specialist one or whether that be a part of the normal set. I mean, again, where do you go? Where do you finish? Pitching wedge, 9-9?
Yeah, I look at it as if you're planning to full swing it, like if it's part of your gapping for your full swing, then
Yep.
having them blend, the correct club for that set makes more sense because it's more likely to fit your gapping, right?
Yeah.
If you're using it as a specialty club, like as a chip, or 3/4 swing, or you're doing it's a utility club more than a part of the gapping, then you can go for a more specialist wedge. But you know, if it's part of your gapping profile, then go with the matching wedge.
Absolutely. Eero says, we are getting a robot to hit 1,000 balls for that test. Hope not. And then TubeZilla's just given a little bit more data or more description on the version 2 and version 1. But yeah, I mean, they're not going to be for retail. I very much doubt they'll be for any form of retail release. But at one point, you never know, I might get on with Titleist well enough to be able to, well, get anything from them would be nice. Getting an email from them would be the first win. But there you go. Eero says, how do you guys decide on your gamer putter? I gamed the DF3 because I like the face balance idea and feel off the face, but I've been fighting the lines, the line reads lately. Oh, okay, so from a point of view of reading it, yeah. Oh God, putter is, like, when you're talking about fitting, driver fitting, iron fitting, it's a science. It doesn't take much to fit someone correctly with all the measuring tools that we have today. Putting. It is such a feel-based, and you've got to get in the head of the individual, and that head of the individual can change day to day. It is, putter fitting is a nightmare.
I don't know what the rest of the world is like in terms of the big box stores now, but in here, the big box stores usually has a big green with 5 or 6 hole placements in it, and all the putters in a rack around it. So you could just pick up a putter, go to a putting spot, putt, pick up a putter, go to a putter. And I did that for probably 4 hours one day.
How big is this green, by the way, in these big box stores in America?
It's probably 20 foot by 20 foot, maybe a bit longer, maybe 40 by 40. Usually there's plenty of, like, you could have 3 or 4 people putting on there and not interact with each other.
You do realise that you are near enough describing the entire size of some people's pro shops.
Well, yeah, but I mean, this is the big box store. The big box store is like, giant inside. But yeah, so literally I just stood there and I just picked putters off the rack and just stood in the same spot, hitting the same putt over and over again until, every time I picked one up, after a few strokes, you could tell, okay, this is fighting me, this is not fighting me. And then I just narrowed down the ones that weren't fighting me. And then eventually I found the one that I could hit on the exact line I wanted over and over again. And that's how I picked the putter.
So you talk about there, an individual that has an understanding of what they feel and what they want. And then you're also talking about a separate thing about being able to access somewhere that has that many putters for people to physically try, which generally speaking, especially in the UK, is a nightmare. Putter fitting.
Yeah, as like I said, in America, those are pretty common. I could go, there's like 5 of those places within an hour drive of here that I could go to.
Yeah, UK is a bit different.
Yeah.
And from what I understand also, that a lot of places in Europe is no different, if not worse, as well. So, right, so thanks guys. My gap wedge is for full swings. Keep it, that's fine. Most greenside and pitching is done with my 54. Yeah, in that case, keep it as though you would normally, your normal set. And Eero says, my basement has that many putters. Are they all broken? I hope not. Right, so, Wobot. Let's very quickly get onto the robot before we just finish off with the chat questionnaire. So if you have just joined, make sure you get your questions in the chat because we will be going through them to make sure we haven't missed anyone's before we finish the pod. So let's talk about the robot. So you can't quite see it. It is sitting right next to me, nice and quiet. It's well behaved. And there has been quite a big process of construction. I must admit, I'm probably most happy about the tee box because that's one that's created the most artistic license for me to be able to make it look a certain way. And I think from a newbie, I think it looks quite good. It works exactly within reason how we want the T system to work. So I've got 3 motors. I've got one to do the X, one to do the Y, and then one to do the Z, wherever you are in the world. And as long as I use the jog command, they all work exactly how I want. If I use the go to a certain position, there's not a linear relationship and they start going some weird and wonderful distances, but the jog one. So if I get it in the middle, 0, 0, I can then use the jog to move it across 12 mil or whatever, and it works absolutely fine. So to give you an idea, we have had a proof of concept swing. We have had a problem. The problem being two things. One, we found out quite quickly that the motor that I bought, which was described as a certain amount of force, actually isn't the amount of force that we wanted it to be. And so we were not reaching or achieving the speeds that we hoped. And so we were basically capping out, second time around, trying to get it as absolutely balanced as possible for the speed and everything without cutting out. We got it to around about 68.4 miles an hour or whatever it was. That was the most we got it to with an iron. And of course, you guys know I do 70, 80, 90 miles an hour with an iron and 80, 95, 110 with a driver. It just so happens that within a very small amount of margin, with the difference in length and weight, etc., that 90 miles an hour with a iron is very, very similar to the speed required for a 110 mile an hour driver. So if we can reach 90 miles an hour with an iron, I've got no issue with the fact that we've got the right speed for the driver as well. However, capped out at 68.4, I think you'll agree, does not cut the mustard. And so then Andy and I racked our brains, his considerably larger than mine, and we come up with a test, very nice, quick and easy test to effectively test what type of motor this is, and it's a physical pull test. It should have, the motor we bought was a 60 Newton meter motor, which means it requires 60 Newton meters of force applied before the motor will start to say, no, I can't hold it anymore, and I'll start slipping. 60 Newton meters should be ample to get this thing swinging quickly. It didn't. It crapped out at about, what was it, 27, 30 or whatever it is Newton meters, about half, give or take.
Yeah, about half.
So it's not the motor. This is not the droid you are looking for. So we need, I'm in communication at the moment with China to try and get the right motor here. Yep, but we did have a proof of concept. I dialed the speed down to something a little bit more sensible within the realms of what the robot could do consistently. So if you have a look at this, we'll go, Andy and my head is going to have to kind of be chopped a little bit. So this is a 6-shot data set. However, ignore the top one, ignore the first 47.9, because you can see that by the strike on the right hand side, it's 3 mil toe, 4 mil low. So from that shot there, I just did a quick tweak of the Y and Z axis of moving it a little bit from toe towards the heel, and then obviously 4 mil low, just dropping it, raising it, sorry, to get to the point where we want. Or dropping it, you know what I mean. Anyway, trying to get to 0, 0 within a very small amount of margin. And then you can see the final 5 shots after that, and if you want to look at the averages, you can do. That averages there is with that top shot removed, because obviously I was still adjusting at that point. But you can see all of those shots, the 5 shots, 47.9, 47.7, 48, 48.1, 48, with a very, very small margin of speed difference. Not a lot at all. We have efficiencies 132, 133, 133, 133, 133. Attack angles within 0.2 of a degree. Remember, this could easily be 0.5 of a degree, and then it could be literally 0.05 of a degree either way. So very quite tight. Club pass, very, very close. I mean, what is that? That's again the same thing, 0.5, and it could be 1 degree out either way. Face to path is slightly different, but we are still talking between the biggest and the worst, 0.8 of a degree. Loft is within 0.4 of a degree. I mean, that is, and then strike, really. I mean, Andy, what is your view, before I go on to the ball data, what is your view from a stat math guy about the information that you saw on there?
I mean, look at the standard deviations. It's as like, even if you look at it from a 0.1, and then look at that as a percentage. 0.1 of a percentage of effectively 48. It's 100th. It's like 0.01%. So
it's tiny.
yeah, like in terms of consistency, you couldn't. I think we're within the realm for most of those metrics. We're within the realms of sensitivity of quad, like within 1 millimeter. That's within the sensitivity of quad probably.
Yep.
80 DPS. The DPS is a weird one because we're using a fixed wrist robot, so there is no DPS effectively. The DPS is all down to wobble within the geometry of the head.
No, so there will be, because it's on an arc, there will be some form of degrees per second rotation relative to quad.
And it's within the degree per second is within the realms of the speed variance. Right, so your club head speed is gonna dictate your DPS accuracy. So
and if you look at if you look at 0.6 close, second one down, 823, 0.9 close, 859, then it goes to 0.1 at 631, 0.2, 7, and you can see it's directly correlative within reason to as the face becomes more closed, just through the shaft releasing fractionally differently or however it will work, you can see a very slight difference in degree and closure rate. But I mean, it's so minor. The only thing that bothered me on that one a little bit was the face to path one. I would have loved to have seen that face to path the same as the club path. I mean, the club path there, again, that could be 0.5 and 0.5
like you said,
difference.
It's all down to the timing of when the robot stops accelerating, because that's effectively what that closure rate is when the exact millisecond that the robot stopped closing. So I was doing some math on this earlier on, actually, and 29 milliseconds of timing can be 2 degrees of face to path. So 1 degree.
29 milliseconds.
Yeah, can be 2 degrees face to path, and so 1 degree is 14.5 milliseconds.
I did a similar thing. I can't remember what it was now. It was effective. I was trying to work out within the time of impact, which is 0.0005 or so of a second. Something ridiculously tiny like that. When you're looking at that amount, and when you're looking at closure rates that some people can generate of nearly 4,000 plus sometimes degrees per second, how much the face rotates in that tiny amounts of time.
It's crazy.
It is ridiculous.
And we're limited to we're limited to the the measurement of the. So we know that the stepper motor has so many 1.2 degrees per step in it, right? And we've got that divided by 400 for the base steps. So
360.
That is the maximum resolution that we have in terms of when the motor decides to stop accelerating. So I don't know what that is. It's like 0.003 of a degree. And if you're calculating what 0.03 is at, let's say, 90 miles an hour, it could probably be 100 milliseconds. So, we're talking we're within the realms of physics here. Of literally, you can't get that better than that. Nobody can get that better than that. It's not possible.
Yeah, and then what we're looking at here more than anything else is one, it needs to be much more consistent than me. Well, not much more, but it needs to be more consistent than me. But two, it just needs to do the donkey work to save me having to do it. And as long as it can do the 3 different swing speeds and it can do all the miss hits as well, remember, the miss hits are, from my point of view, they're the ones that hurt me. Is not the 70, not the 80. I can't stand doing these slow swing speed tests. I hate doing the low swing speed tests because it's terrible for my golf swing to do it. But doing the 90 miles an hour and the 110 miles an hour, the higher swing speed with the heat map stuff, all the mishits, etc., they're the ones that knacker my knee and body. So if RoboNut behind me can do it, then that's the whole concept of it. So we have identified certain areas of what we need to tweak with the frame and just shore up the frame a little bit and bolt it to the floor and these things that we're fine. But from a first test point of view, I personally, and it would have been much, much better if we had the right motor, I think it's done all right.
No, it's totally done all right. Like, we were scratching our heads right off the bat trying to figure out why is this thing not spinning the right speed. And once we eliminated the fact that, okay, this motor's got nowhere near the power that it's supposed to have, and then you backtracked, okay, so we're estimating it's got this much power. Okay, that's perfectly where we're at. We're saying we should be limited to 70 miles an hour. So we're effectively, exactly where this motor should be. So that means everything is working exactly how it should. And theoretically, if we'd had the 90 mile an hour motor, I suspect we would have been right on the money with 90 miles an hour and the same consistency.
I hope. The only thing that you found, obviously getting very close to the top end of the motor's speed potential, was that face the path started to become a little bit interesting, and again I think it's because the motor started to miss steps, trying to push too much through it, and of course then adding like a bit of that to the head, as it's rather than a relatively smooth accelerate. There's not much thing that does smoothly, but from a point of view of how it accelerates, and everything accelerates linearly rather than accelerate, stop, and causing this in the head. I think that's what it was causing. Well, it'll be interesting to get it going properly. But I mean, if you want to have a look at the ball data, I quickly popped up on the screen, but you can have another look on that one. Obviously, this is the 47.9 miles an hour, so from a test point of view. So we are not talking about anything particularly brilliant. But you can see there 66. So again, ignore the top one. Don't look at the top one, because obviously I was just dialing in strike for the top one there. But 66, 66, 67, 67, 67, and again, that easily could be 67.5 yards, and a tiny amount could literally be 0.01 nearly.
What's really cool is that obviously you can see how consistent it is when we dial it into the center, but you can also see the exact amount lost from that initial miss of 3 and 4 millimeter. It's quite clear exactly how much distance was lost on that one shot.
Yeah, it's interesting how it works that way, but I mean, peak height is all exactly the same. You can see the stand deviations all of 0. A difference of 1.5 yards, that is it, in offline between all of those 5 shots. And again, yes, I know we are swinging at a slower swing speed, but you can just sort of see descent angles. I mean, spin rates are very, very, I mean, that's the interesting thing with spin. It will be interesting to see how much variation we do get under normal shots, and then how much we pull into question how much the ball itself creates different variances. And we might even find out by hitting different balls whilst keeping all the dynamics exactly the same, that the same ball model, even within the same sleeve, have
totally
different spin profiles.
I totally.
Yeah, and we're not talking about aerodynamic lift, we are just talking raw spin generation from friction, etc. So that'll be an interesting one. And of course, we've got launch on there, all very, very similar as well. So I think it's an encouraging test. I'm looking forward to getting the 60 Newton meter one here, bolting the thing down, shoring the frame up to a certain extent in a certain way to stop any kind of movement, and seeing what it's capable of doing. And if it does, one thing, it does bend the shaft. There's quite a lot of deflection that way. But remember, we're clamping it right at the very top of the grip. And so normally you'll have both hands on it, and that will stop a little bit of deflection. But the human brain and body does the adjustments subconsciously for all of these things.
Yeah. And although we don't have the table for it, when we did get it running at close to 70 miles an hour, it was like 70, the number was super, super close, like 68, 68, 68, 68, 68. As long as the motor wasn't slipping, the number produced was bang on the
Yeah,
money over and over again.
yeah. And as soon as
So,
it started to slip, we started seeing face to path go a little bit wacko. But I think, again, you take all of the little micro twists, all these little bits out of the frame, and shore everything up, get it bolted down so there's no movement whatsoever. Because obviously we're dealing with a 30 Newton meter motor. We're going to be dealing with a 60 Newton meter motor, hopefully very, very soon. And obviously that creates more grunt. So we are definitely going to have to do our best at trying to shore the other bits and pieces up. But I think it was a useful test.
From two idiots and a Chinese, import store, we did all right.
I know, yeah. It's yeah. It's an interesting build. I've never built anything like this before. I've built things before. I've built buildings, etc. before and all that lot. I'm quite handy in that way, but I've never dealt with aluminium extrusion or done anything like this in any way. So I think within reason, it's done okay. So what have we got here for the chat questions? Let's get the chat questions highlighted up on here. Oh, hello, what's going on there? Ah, well, all the rest go. Maybe I didn't do that one properly then.
Can you open the Discord image I put in T-Box?
Let's have a. Oh, I can't without getting rid of you. I can get. Well,
No,
hang
fine.
on. Well, I could.
Yeah, I don't care if you get rid of me.
Yeah, but I don't know how to get you back. No, I better not. I can't have a look at. What was the image in T-Box?
It was the putting test area in the big box stores.
Oh, okay. Well, for anyone who's watching right now, and for anyone who's watching afterwards, if you go onto Discord in the T-Box, that is open to everybody to go, and you don't have to be a member of the website at all, www.askgolfnut.com. You don't have to be a tier member at all. You can go in the T-Box and then see Andy's example. I'm going to be so jealous, aren't I? Right, so let's go to chat questions. Let's make sure we haven't missed off anyone. Math question, Tube says math question for your robot testing. Is it possible to, let's say, test a club at 90 miles an hour, then 100 miles an hour, then accurately predict the numbers of 110? Well, will most of the numbers have linear increase? Yep, very predictable. Andy has popped that one in there. It would be really interesting to see if we get ones that don't.
You mean the irons? Like a club that isn't linear when you increase speed?
Driver or iron. If
well, yeah, increase... but like I mean, we've seen it. I mean, that's why we had problems with that original ZX4.
Yeah,
that was producing erratic numbers right out the middle.
Very much so, like the Cali X that I have as the donor golf club in the swing robot. Well, it's on the basis that if I break it, doesn't matter. That we got the same thing from that. We got some very interesting center readings, and so that's why the video review went the way it did.
But other than that, yeah, no, it's almost crazy how predictable it is when you once you have a flight model, right? So we created a flight model for the website from scratch. It uses similar input variables as Quad does, so the same kind of ball drag and the ball lift variables that Quad produces, but not Quad, Foresight, whatever. But that flight model, when you increase velocity, it's very, very predictable results, and stuff like that. So yeah.
Cool. Do you have equation for estimating the numbers for a higher swing speed with only one tested speed? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, just use distance potential. I mean, that's what distance potential is. If you're talking about just raw yardage, just use the distance potential number from the club. It's pretty linear increase. When you increase speed, not a massive. Like if you had it like tested at 70 and then you wanted to predict what it's going to be at 120, that's a little bit more erratic. But go from 100 to 110. Extremely predictable using distance potential number.
Yeah, and then people could also use it for if they're doing speed training and they're currently swinging their 7-iron 70 miles an hour, and they wanted to know what difference it would make if they just was to add a little bit of speed and look at the benefit they're going to get distance-wise. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a gold member on the website, just look at the ball flight button. That's what it's there for. You could put. I mean, the self-fit takes existing clubs and and tells you what the values are for those clubs. But the ball flight button allows you to input any input variables you want. So if you want to keep specific input variables and then just increase speed, you can do. FSR ratings on all the clubs will tell you what the spin rate is at different speeds. So, if you divide your speed by the FSR and then multiply it by a new speed, you know what the new spin rate's going to be at the higher speed, give or take. Everything's pretty predictable, and that's what most of the metrics are there for, so that anybody can take those metrics, plug it into their own thing, and get the results.
The website is an amazing, amazing thing. So, Tuesday said, when a person swings a club that may impart different forces torque at different stages of the swing, I think there's a position in my downswing where I can change from a pulling feel to a pushing feel. And there would be a stage in between where there is less pressure on the club. I wonder, does the change how the shaft releases versus a robot swing with a near consistent force throughout the swing? I wonder, does the change show the shaft releases versus?
Yeah, I mean, so most people have a single point release where they have acceleration, and then the acceleration maxes out, and then it's coasting to the ball. And that point of changing from acceleration to coasting is when the club releases.
There are a few people grip speed.
Well, just rotational, whatever, rotational velocity, whether that's produced from a single plane or two plane, the acceleration on the head is, an X amount. Or most people only have a single point of acceleration, where the acceleration drops to 0, and that's where the head releases. Not many people have what's called a double pump where they stop accelerating, they coast, and then they accelerate again.
Yeah, I mean, I recognize more head and then grip relationships more than anything else.
But yeah, but so we're talking shaft dynamics, right? So, whether you have a linear acceleration, right? Like my swing tends to be a very linear acceleration because it's long and sweepy. Or you have a multi-stage acceleration. So long as your acceleration doesn't get to 0, the shaft won't release.
Yes.
It'll continue to be loaded until your acceleration gets to 0. And when your acceleration gets to 0, that's when shaft dynamics takes over. So that release point is, and we're controlling that release point by setting the acceleration curve of the robot. So if the robot swings at a full acceleration and never slows down is the wrong word, never stops accelerating, then the shaft will always be loaded all the way up to the point of impact. Now, we can set when the robot stops accelerating to determine where that release point is.
Because we haven't got a hinge release. We haven't got a hinge there from our wrist angle. We have just one arm effectively doing all of the movement. So, yeah.
Because we're not testing shafts. We're only testing heads. We don't need to test the shafts. So all we care about is that whatever profile we put in the robot, that it produces that profile every time. And therefore the strike for that profile should always be the same for that iron. So we can hit the same shot 10 times in a row.
And because of the fact that obviously the information we're grabbing is launch factor, is face spin rate, is these kind of things which are, it doesn't matter what loft you deliver, because the information that we're grabbing from that is, it's not affected by the loft that we deliver, because it all can be worked out either way.
Pete.
So Pete says, have you considered going for a slightly higher spec motor to avoid running at max capacity? Well, the 30 Newton meter one that we've got currently that does actually say 60 Newton meter on it, which obviously is definitely not 60 Newton meter. It will be interesting to see. We can't really go, unless we go a completely different way of motor, to get to way past 60 Newton meters. I don't know. I mean, it can be done, but it means much more expense, basically. And
yeah, I mean, like, so the 60 Newton meters should put us past our threshold by 10-20%. So we shouldn't really be running into the gray zone of pushing the motor to the point where a failure with the correct 60 Newton meter one.
yeah,
That being said, motor power is always come down to how many volts you can put into it and how many amps you can put into it. And the UK pretty much is 230 volt and 13 amp. So you multiply that out, that gives you a maximum kilowatts, which is around about 2.8. Yeah, 2.8 with losses.
Oh yeah, because we're talking about 220 volt. But yeah.
Anyway, so the 2.8 kilowatts can only produce a certain amount of power, and pretty much 60 Newton meters is getting close to 2.8 kilowatts. So short of Jay having an industrial line run into his swing shop too, so we can have 400 and whatever 60 volt three phase.
Yeah. Jay Studios going 3-phase.
Yeah, and then that's basically the next step up in motor. And actually, if you have 3-phase, you do get a lot more options in terms of motor power. But
yeah, I don't think that's going to
no.
happen. Tube said that's really cool. Alex says, yeah.
Causing chaos.
He is, yeah. Gene Parent mentioned that one of the things that he was surprised by in the early days of swing robot testing was the driver that performs consistently well up to 180 mile an hour ball speed. Up to, I need to move that across a little bit. Hello, Stephen Rook, and thank you for subscribing to the channel and for having your channel open so everyone can see who you're subscribed to. Only people that pop up there on the screen that have their tick in the box on their channel to say, I don't care if everyone knows who I'm subscribed to, pop up.
Yeah, so I mean,
yeah,
it's erratic depending on how it loads the shaft. So, I mean, 180 mile an hour ball speed is what?
Quick.
Club head speed. Yeah. So anything past 160 mile an hour club head speed is getting to the threshold of what a shaft can physically do. Like if you get past the 160 mile an hour club head speed, you're going to start shattering shafts. Like you're actually at the dynamics of the material. So
you would need one heck of a warm up phase, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you think so. So we're like even like my swing speed, like a max swing speed, about 125. Like I'm pushing the material science of the shaft that I use for a regular shaft. That's why the shafts that the long drive guys use are extremely tough, and like extremely quality assured, right? They check that they're like the perfectly. I don't like the term puring because I think puring is a waste of money for most people. The variation between the So, but at that swing speed, now you're talking, it becomes a little bit more critical that every shaft has the exact same radial consistency, so it produces the same CPM at every angle. But and that's why even robots, it doesn't matter what swing in the club, that's going to come true at those velocities, whether it's a person or a robot.
Yeah, true. Tuber says, can't use a gearbox to speed up the swing. It's actually the other way around.
Yeah, so torque and RPM are inversely related. So if you double the speed, you would half the torque. If you double the torque, you half the speed. And we're in a world where we need fairly high torque and about 500 to 600 RPM. Now, as it happens with most motors, the torque goes down as RPMs come up. So 0 to about 300, there's no torque loss, and then from 300 to about 600, you lose about 20%. So we're getting to the point where our torque curve is starting to drop off as our RPM goes up. So a
Especially on
gearbox
our
would,
30 Newton meter
yeah,
motor.
putting a gearbox in would either drop our RPM too low so that we can't get to 90 miles an hour, or it would go in the gearbox the other way around. We'd have the RPMs, but not enough torque. So.
Yeah. I mean, there is options that we could go. I mean, AC servo motor that will spin it at 2,500 RPM with, say, 15 Newton meters of torque, with a gearbox, knock it down to 1 to 5 to 500, and then times your 15 by 5, 75. And then you got loads more Newton meters if you want to. But it's just cost. Again, I'll be absolutely completely honest with this. This is a project that it is no one, I don't believe anyone has ever done what I have done before properly. I mean, people have made them for like a school project as such, and I've seen some on the internet where there's this one which just basically spin slowly, goes up to speed, and then to hit the golf ball, which is sitting on the whole machine, is basically just tipped down, dropped onto it, and it works, kinda. But that is in no way accurate. That is just a case of, well, can we spin something fast enough, and then can we just move it at the right time to hit the golf ball with no idea what's going on. So what we're making, it has to be accurate. So I don't know anyone that has ever done it, which is now not in a commercial environment. This is my first time doing it. And I'll be honest, I don't necessarily want to spend a boatload of money on something which quite clearly could be a complete, utter waste of money if it was never going to work. So it was always going to be let's see if we can do what we need it to do with the expenditure being as literally the tightest, smallest amount possible, but making sure that when we buy everything, it's what we need and it will do the job. But it's that balancing act, and that's that seesaw that we're trying to achieve. And the 60 Newton meter motor should be absolutely fine. It should have enough to do what we need. It's just obviously that the Chinese didn't send the right motor, which has caused all these issues that we're finding at the moment, as in it won't go fast enough. But that's not because the maths was wrong. It was someone picked up the wrong box out of the wrong, and then, yeah. But there you go. It is one of those.
I was very unhappy when I thought the math was wrong.
Very, very quickly, anyone who's watching, before we finish, because it is basically time to finish now, can you wish Niels a happy birthday? It's his birthday today. There you
Niels,
go.
happy birthday. Oh,
Happy birthday,
another shout out is that Mr. Eero hit a 311-yard drive the other day.
What, on Tiger Woods 2025?
No, in real life. He's
Well
He's
done.
come a long way in 4 months.
Well,
I can't remember what his numbers were, but I think he was getting like 220 carry with like 250 rollout, and now he's 311.
Whoa, boom. Big dog. If you're going 311, you've now got no excuse, because you've now obviously got the speed to get your handicap down. Right, so bad, Jay. Right, we've caught up with everything. Happy birthday, 369 says to Niels. Happy birthday, Niels, 0 says. So yeah, happy birthday to him. I'm not quite sure at what age you start becoming the same number every single time. But my colleague from my old job at the driving range many moons ago, I think he turned 67, I don't know how many times. But Eero says it was downhill, downwind, and on the moon.
Still, even a little bit downhill. You gotta get that ball out there, even for it to roll anywhere close to 311.
Right, but people, very quickly, right? Jude says, is the math nut drinking from a plant pot? It's huge.
Nah, it's just a typical American cup. This is just,
yeah.
This is any store you go into. This is the cup.
That's a regular. That is a regular. I can't remember what I was going to say now. There you go. Now, I wanted to wish Niels happy birthday. I did find out that it was his birthday today, and so happy birthday to him. I can't think of what the other thing. I am now trying my best I can do to try and get as many of the Cobra driver videos uploaded. Obviously, got 3 more to do. Got the X. I've then got the LS, and then I'm going to do the draw. That will come. Oh, I'm going to try and get as many done this week as I possibly can do. Although I've still got. I struggled today. I was about 15 minutes late in the end, I think, today. But for some reason, my PC...
Only you noticed.
Yeah, I do notice. But my PC is struggling. Now adding different components to the... Did I send you a screenshot, didn't I, of what my editing thing was looking like? And there was just so many different bits for my PC, poor PC, to do. Yeah, but that's fine. So, say goodnight, RoboNut. He's quite quiet. He doesn't say much. Right, well, in that case, we're caught up with everyone. Thank you very much for watching, as always. Andy, thank you very much for joining us, as always. Thank you for all your input and your, well, math nut brain. And the cats.
2 cats were on TV today.
They were. You want to sit in your lap like that?
Yeah, they're not that kind of cat.
No. Cool. Right, guys, thank you very much for watching, as always, and we'll catch everyone next week when it comes to the podcast. If you want any specific topics, questions, or anything else like that, pop into Discord, email me, jay@askgolfnut.com or askgolfnut@gmail.com. Leave a message, leave a comment on the video, anything else like that. If you want your question popped in, or any topic that you would like us to discuss next week, get it in there, and so we can have a look at explain that for you. So thank you very much, everyone. Appreciate it. Bye, Kat.
Take care.
Cheerio. Bye.